Sends carefully selected Year 9 students, an RSL person, 2 teachers and a tour leader to war arenas of World War I, where Australians were involved. That year we went to Belgium and France. It was enlightening to be in Ypres, Belgium, where at the Menin Gate, a last post ceremony has been held each and every evening since 1929, except for the 4 years of German occupation. That tradition was established to express the gratitude of the Belgian nation towards those who died for its freedom and independence. And personally, I had the honour of reading the ode to the approximately 2,000 people who gathered there that night. Each of our members had to research a soldier or nurse and pay tribute to them at their resting place among the cemeteries in Belgium and France. I chose Mick Mannion from Beaconsfield, who died in the battle at Pozieres. His headstone is at Serra Road in France, where I told the story of his life to our touring party. I paid tribute to his chosen soldier, Second Lieutenant Alfred Hearps, at Mouquet Farm in France. I would like to point out that Will was here this morning, and he has just won the Tasmanian Lions Youth of the Year contest. Now to Alfred Hearps. He was the first officer of Aboriginal descent in the Australian Imperial Forces. Interestingly, Will mentioned that Jack, as Alfred was known, was a descendant of Manalagenna, a great warrior and chief of the Ben Lomond tribe, and the grandfather of Dalrymple Briggs, whose descendants included 34 soldiers serving in the First World War. Alfred was 19 years of age when he became the first Aboriginal man to join up in 1914 in Queenstown, where he worked as a clerk. He boarded His Majesty's Australian transport ship, the Geelong, in Hobart. As a sergeant in the 12th Battalion, he was bound for Gallipoli. The Geelong was among the first vessels to land. Amazingly, Alfred served there until the evacuation in January 1916. The 12th Battalion then went on to fight in some of the bloodiest and costliest battles on the Western Front. Just to give you some idea of the enormity of the conflict with the Germans, day 1 of the Battle of the Somme, there were 60,000 British casualties. 20,000 were killed. Through 1916, the 12th Battalion fought on the Somme in France, at Pozieres, and fatally nearby they took on the heavily defended German strongpoint known as Mouquet Farm. And it was here that 21-year-old Alfred Hearps lost his life. One of 6,000 Australian casualties in that battle. Reported as missing, it was a year before his loved ones knew of young Jack's fate. In one of many anguished letters to the Red Cross, his mother wrote, "I'm indeed heartbroken concerning my son's fate. I do not know what to think or what to do. Will you please let me know exactly what you think? The suspense is getting more than I can bear." It was not until 1919 that Alfred's parents received an official letter informing them of their son's fate. It read, "Whilst leading his platoon, and when just at his objective, he was struck on the back of the neck by a piece of shrapnel. He lived for a little over an hour. He was buried near Mouquet Farmhouse. He has no known grave and is commemorated at the Australian National Memorial at Vieux-Bretonneux." Will Scott was a special guest at Manalagenna Day at Cape Portland in 2019, and that resulted in a tribute Alfred Hearps booklet. There were many more Aboriginal people and many more descendants of Manalagenna serving in World War I with Jack. 74 Tasmanian Aboriginal soldiers served. This included 18 men from Cape Barren Island and 13 from Flinders Island, 8 of whom were descendants of Fanny Cochrane Smith. Some 800 to 1,000 Aboriginal people managed to enlist, despite the fact that this was prohibited at a time when Australia's government wanted a white army or a white Australia. As soldiers abroad, they experienced less discrimination than they had at home. But for those who survived, returned Aboriginal soldiers were once again marginalised, and their needs as veterans, often living remotely, were neglected by the Australian government, in part because they were overwhelmed by the number of men and families requiring support, but also because of a blatantly racist culture. It is only in recent years that the fate of those returned soldiers is being uncovered. The experience of overlooked Aboriginal veterans is a chapter that, as a maturing nation, we need to understand and acknowledge. Only belatedly have we recognised that their contribution should have been honoured from the outset. Recent developments suggest we may even see our way to commemorating those who fought in the frontier wars that raged during early settlement, wars that almost exterminated Alfred Hearps' ancestors. History can be painful, and we are slow to look back, and yet look back we must. Today, it's hard to comprehend what motivated each of these soldiers to serve a country that failed to respect them. But serve they did, and for that we are forever grateful. Aboriginal servicemen and women have made and continue to make a significant contribution to Australia's efforts in war and in peace. Second Lieutenant Alfred Hearps, young Jack, we remember you today, and we acknowledge your fellow Aboriginal Australian servicemen and women, those who have long gone, those who are still with us, and those still serving. We honour all of you and are grateful for your service and sacrifice for our country.